Hello, everyone, and welcome to General Wisdom, where we speak with WNL alumni about what they do, where they live, and the journeys that have led them there. I'm your host, Morgan Harris, and today on the program we have Joe Sussingham from the class of 2013, who is an electronic dance music producer currently based out of LA. How you doing, Joe?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic, but apparently not as well as you are doing, which is why we have you on the program here.
As you can see, I'm doing really well. I have a mattress without sheets on it and some unplugged equipment.
That is you are getting a peer into the life and work of modern musicians right here.
Yeah, I should be on like Cribs or something. So let me just say before we start the interview, for the record, that I literally wouldn't be where I am without your boy Morgan Harris right here, because my first year at WNL, we were hanging out and he said, "Hey, you really need to try this program," because, you know, I was telling him I'm in bands and stuff. And Morgan actually showed me the program, which I would then use to go on and create the music that has brought me to Los Angeles. So literally, it's all because of you, buddy.
Wow. Well, I'm humbled, and yeah, sure, I will take credit for the entirety of your success. Thank you. That is a fond memory I have. You
Very
in
fond.
and I remember I handed this little square, that Ableton Launchpad, on my computer to just go play around, and yep, there it is.
The rest was history.
As you mentioned, you came into WNL having already a decently successful project going with your friend from high school named Bryce. And this project was called Coyote Kisses, right? And that is your current project still. So take us through the sort of evolution. What was your sound like back then in high school?
Sure. So I've played music my whole life, as I'm sure many incoming students to WNL have. I think what differentiated my background a little bit was, so I played in like metal bands my whole life, and then my buddy Bryce, who's he's like a great pianist, synthesizer player. We had this synth pop band, and we sounded a lot like Passion Pit or kind of like Neon Indian, or a lot of those around 2008, 2009. A lot of those synth pop acts were getting really big, so we were kind of modeled off that. And I would play guitar and sing, and he would play synth. And we were fun, and we picked up some steam in our hometown, Lakeland, Florida, just because the music we were making was unlike pretty much anything to come out of there. So we had a decent local following, but it still was just very much a couple of high school kids, you know, and their band. It wasn't really anything else than that. And then we went to school, and we kind of set it aside. But then when I got to school, that's when I was also getting into music like Justice. That Justice album came out, and like kind of discovering dance music, and I was really digging it. And that's actually also when you showed me Ableton, because I was talking to you about Justice and saying I wanted to form like a more serious electronic project, and you gave me Ableton Live 8, and I then I split it with my buddy Bryce, and we kind of shifted from a synthy kind of funny pop act to like a hardcore electronic dance music band.
Nice.
Yeah,
hardcore is a good an apt word for some of those tracks.
Yeah, they go pretty heavy sometimes.
They were big hits with my students up in Connecticut, I have to say.
Oh, cool. Oh yeah, I remember you telling me about that. That's awesome.
You and Bryce, as Coyote Kisses, just played Coachella, one of the biggest music festivals in the world. How did you wind up there? What was that like? And what other big festivals and shows are on your radar coming up?
So yeah, that was really cool, a really unbelievable experience. We ended up there because the tastemakers who put the stage we played together were really liking the music that we had put out in like January and February, and they asked us to come. And they've since booked us for a lot of other stuff too. So it's cool. And they're a company called the Do Lab. They're based out of LA, and they like really focus on kind of growing futuristic, forward-thinking music. And a lot of it comes from Los Angeles, which seems to be the biggest music scene for the stuff I do right now in the United States. But I digress. So yeah, Coachella was unbelievable. and it was surreal to be kind of sharing the same VIP area as like these guys that were my heroes growing up, like Rat-a-Tat and Jack White. But at the same time, you know, it felt like I'd earned it. You know, I've been working really, really hard for the past 6 or 7 years, and it finally felt like, you know, some of it's starting to pay off. It felt like I was where I belonged, you know, finally starting to make an impact. And it's cool because now we're starting to get some other big looks too. This show Splash House in Palm Springs in August is going to be really cool. A lot of my favorite artists are going to be there.
Let me guess, is it in a water park?
It's at like a pool club. So it's super like high society-ish, but it's still got a music festival feel to it. It's going to be cool.
Sweet.
But yeah, I mean, we're now getting pulled instead of having to push. The past like 5 years of my life has been spent like pushing. And now it's finally starting to get, you know, pulled along, which is really nice, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
It feels like it's finally starting to pay off because I've definitely put in the hours at this point.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. Even at WNL, which
at school
is not, you know, let's be honest, not known as a school that turns out professional musicians. You know, plenty of great musicians who happen to be doctors and lawyers and other things, but it's relatively rare that we have a full-time professional musician come out of here. You made it happen.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to current students who are looking to break into the music scene themselves, and what resources and opportunities might be available to them while they are here at WNL?
So that's an interesting question. It definitely was not the easiest thing. And I don't think that should come as a surprise to anyone who's a current student at WNL. There's very much a pressure to fit into a certain mold. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with tradition or culture, but people who tend to think a bit differently, maybe they dress differently or listen to different stuff, they tend to stick out like a sore thumb. And because the community is so tight knit, sometimes that's going to lead to some sort of like unwanted attention. But my biggest thing was just being persistent. It took a little bit for me to embrace being kind of that music kid. You know, when other people were out at parties, I would be in my room making music. My freshman year, when everyone else was pledging, I was in my room 8 hours a day working on Ableton. But I ended up spring pledging, so that actually, it ended up working okay for me. I think the main thing is really just embrace like that side of you. People aren't used to seeing someone call themselves a musician. You know, they're used to seeing people say, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a businessman, or I want to be an investment banker. And that's all cool. And then the minute someone says like, I want to be an artist, you kind of get like, what? That's not acceptable. That's not in the vogue. And I think it's just pushing past that and accepting, like, you know, in any creative field, if you want to be a painter, if you want to be a musician, if you want to be a graphic designer, my advice to any current student is be yourself and don't be afraid to be yourself, because you're going to look back and wish that like you hadn't let outside influences shape who you are. And because I didn't, I ended up with a much stronger sense of self, and it actually really helped my art.
Nice. Yeah. And I think that is so true and really, really important to keep in mind that, and not only do you get an enhanced self-awareness when you actually do allow yourself to be yourself, regardless of what community you are in, but especially in a community where sometimes, yeah, like you're saying, people might feel this unspoken sort of pressure to be something.
Yeah.
When you just embrace who you are and do it, that is so inspiring to other people too. And that like helps chip away at that, what ends up being really, you realize it's in a lot of ways kind of just in people's heads. It's not even like a real barrier. Once you just let it go, it's like, hey, all right,
exactly.
I'm here and I'm accepted.
And it was really vindicating because, you know, my freshman and sophomore years, I would DJ parties and stuff, and people would have no idea what I was doing. Some people were so confused by the music I would play that I actually was unplugged several times. And it's funny because then those same people that would unplug me in my later years were hitting me up being like, yo, can you come play this party? Or can you come do this for, like, can you do this X, Y, and Z for me? And I'm not the kind of person to hold grudges, but it's just interesting to see like the trajectory between like, okay, pariah, finally accepted. Now this is cool. Now everybody's doing it.
Right.
And I mean, for example, this is kind of off it's kind of a rant, but at WNL, you don't even see people riding skateboards. You don't even see people biking, right? Because no one wants to bring that sort of attention to themselves. No one wants to be the skateboard kid. No one wants to be the biker kid. But like, you look at every other college campus, it's okay to longboard to class. And I think just that little example is a really good microcosm of the stringentness of WNL. No one wants to be that person to draw any attention to themselves. And if you want to go into some sort of creative field, you have to get used to drawing attention to yourself because you're putting yourself out there, right?
Right.
So, I mean, that all goes to say, like, don't be afraid. You know, it's going to be scary, especially at a school like WNL, to put yourself out there and to make a song, or make, you know, if you're an aspiring actor, to like make a sketch and put it on the internet for people to see. That to most people is traumatizing. And I had to get past that in myself. And once you do, there's this incredible strength that you draw from that, of being like, oh, it is okay. I can put myself out there and like learn from that. And other people can take away from that and become inspired by that. That's the big step.
For either students who are thinking about really pursuing something like you are professionally, or if they're not even that far along and are just kind of curious, what resources do exist at WNL that they might want to look into? Yeah,
so the whole Lenfest Center is fantastic. I mean, everything in there is state of the art. There's great recording equipment. There's recording halls you can go into that are like soundproofed, and all the reverberations in there are like, you know, it was built such that you can record in there and it sounds good. There are like grand pianos that you can use, and classical guitars, and also Graham Spice's class actually did end up helping me. You know, it's kind of a crash course in a lot in Pro Tools, Ableton, Sibelius, Logic. There are definitely ways you can utilize the resources at WNL and use them to your advantage. And furthermore, people are kind of surprised by it, but I was an English major at WNL, and that actually, I think, really ended up helping my songwriting, because I was always reading poetry and I was always analyzing sonnets and Wordsworth and all sorts of stuff. And I think like lyric poetry really ended up helping my songwriting skills.
Nice. That's a really good, good point. And I don't know if, I think this may be a development since after you graduated, but the stuff that Graham has been doing over there, he's been slowly but surely growing that, where I think, yeah, when you were here, the electronic music ensemble was a thing. That's definitely still going. So anyone out there who's interested in getting a peek into this world of electronic music, that's a cool way to start learning about some of those nuts and bolts. And he also is doing a music business class. I don't know, was that available when you were a student here?
You know, I can't remember. I know a lot of people who did do the electronic music ensemble, and they said it was really interesting. And I think it opened a lot of doors for other people who are interested in music and cultivating that kind of artistic side. The electronic music ensemble did a lot for them. I don't know. I actually never saw any of the performances, and I haven't heard about the music business class either, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's good to see that they're starting to be forward thinking there as well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty new. I actually got to go to one little seminar thing that they did this year, and they brought back some alumni, Zoe Yarbrough, Alex Rosenfeld.
Oh, really?
Yeah, do you know him?
Yeah, he's a cool kid.
Yeah, I figured you might know him because he has had. It's a crazy story. This kid was just making a radio show out of his dorm room, and then it started getting millions of listeners a week. And now that's his full-time job. Is he manages a few artists.
Yeah, he manages, I think, like some progressive house producers. And he and I were talking my senior year because he was getting into that too. So it's really cool to see him out there grinding as well. Shouts out to Alex.
Yep. Yeah, but so any students out there watching this who are curious about this whole world, there are some key people who are involved in the scene and would love to hear from you. So Joe's a good point person. A good place to start on campus is just walk over to Graham Spice's office, and he can start showing you a couple avenues you might want to pursue. In that music industry seminar that Graham had, most of those people were coming from Nashville, so there's definitely a decent scene there. But you obviously did not move to Nashville to pursue your music. You moved to LA. So what brought you to LA to work on your craft and get in the scene?
So yeah, Nashville has a very strong music scene, but I think it's more of that like singer-songwriter, grassroots rock and roll stuff going on there. Los Angeles, I've found, is really just a hub of futuristic, kind of forward-thinking electronic music these days. And you see people from all over the world. It used to be New York City and Paris, and now you see everybody moving to Los Angeles. So it's kind of experiencing this weird cultural renaissance of younger artists and musicians moving here to try and make some noise. So every day, like, there's shows, and I've made so many friends with people in the scene out here, and finding a lot of my friends that I've made are actually some of my favorite artists as well. So I moved to Los Angeles just because it really, in this day and age, especially with like the whole EDM explosion, has become the hub. It's definitely the premier. It's at the center of all of it. And I just wanted to be a part of it. I didn't want to feel like I was missing out on anything. What Wall Street is to investment banking, I think the Los Angeles club scene is to electronic music.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you know Kelton? Yeah, you know. Kelton.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, we hang out.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, he was just here on campus along with Matt Lamont, who I think works at Interscope Records.
Shouts out.
For people who are interested in sort of more of the industry side of the business, Kelton was involved in the GAB, the Activities Board, and that's definitely something to get involved in if you're interested in doing booking and artist management and all that kind of stuff. If you meet, you start making those connections.
Absolutely. I mean, he was working with big time artists while we were all in school. I mean, they brought Dylan Francis out, who is, in the next couple of years, we're really going to see him rise as one of the most premier DJs in the world. He's going to be one of those guys making $150 million a year. He's as big as you can get, and the fact that GAB was able to get them to WNL, to get him, was a huge step. Not only was it a huge step for the scene and for the culture there to kind of bring in, that was the first straight up really EDM artist that we've had at Washington and Lee, but I think says a lot about GAB itself that they were able to get someone so professional. So definitely, if you're interested in kind of getting into the realms of booking artists and learning about what goes into the logistics of the music industry, GAB is a really good place to start.
Looking back to when you were here at WNL, what do you wish you had done to better prepare yourself for the real world that you faced after graduating?
Oh man, I say this all the time. I miss learning because I was so wrapped up in trying to make the grade that sometimes I feel like I didn't just stop and appreciate all the crazy things that I was learning. And I think because art, right, it all comes from what's in here. And so I think anything you can do to cultivate knowledge and to cultivate insight and to make you curious, to make you inspired, that all helps intangibly to the artistic process. So, for me, I'm finding out the entertainment industry is a lot about understanding how people think and how people interact and what people's thought processes are. So for that reason, I wish I'd taken some psychology classes. I wish I had paid a little bit more attention, in the science classes to understand. Back then I was so just caught up in passing that I didn't stop and kind of just ingest all of the information that was that was being directed at me.
Yeah, it can be tough. There's just a lot of competing attractions, you know, in college that sometimes you end up just trying to make the grade, like you were saying, rather than learning.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you were saying the number one thing, that the ultimately most practical thing to do is to, while you were in college, embrace
just learn
what you were learning for its intrinsic value, for itself. And then when you go out there into the real world, you will run into all sorts of things that trigger and make use of what you actually were learning or supposed to learn in college.
I agree with that 100%. One thing I really took for granted while I was at WNL was being in an environment where there are so many other smart people around you, keeping you in check, keeping your mind sharp, right? You're constantly, you get to that point where you don't even notice it anymore, that you're like constantly grinding. You're really like sharpening the knife that is your mind the entire time. You're going to classes, and then you have a ton of homework to do, and then you've got a group project to do, and you're around all these other smart people. And I think just your subconscious starts to appropriate that. And by the end of my 4 years there, I don't think I've ever felt so smart. And it's like the fact that I haven't been around that in a couple of years, I feel the absence of that. So what I would say to, like, one thing I wish I had done to prepare myself is embrace that, like, notice yourself getting smarter, cultivate knowledge, take it all in, really just experience it. Because, I mean, you hear it all the time, but it doesn't make sense till it's gone. You will be done with college, and that will be a time in your life that's behind you. So you really have to live in the moment and try and be aware of everything that's happening and take it all in, because it is an incredible experience. And there's so much that can be gained. And for all the trouble, for how hard it was for me at points at Washington and Lee, and for all the struggles I had, I owe so much to that school. It gave me so much. I learned so much about myself, about people, beyond just the realm of just the classroom. It goes a lot further. So my advice is to take it all in, be yourself, don't let it change you, and just enjoy it, because it is a great place to be. And you will miss it when you're gone.
What is the number one thing outside of the classroom that you regret not doing as a student?
I never streaked the colonnade.
Oh, you're not even a real alum.
I know. I never did that. What else didn't I never rafted Goshen, and I never went to Panther Falls. Those are my biggest regrets.
Dang, yeah, those are some important landmarks. Did you tube the Maury at least?
I tubed the Maury many times, but
okay.
I never got to do Goshen, which is kind of sad.
Well, maybe when you have a little break in the tour schedule, swing on by. We can
swing on by to Lexington, Virginia.
Quick rapid fire.
Okay.
Well, okay, you already said.
Go ahead.
Goshen or Maury?
Maury.
Food, D-Hall or Co-op?
Co-op. Sunrise sandwiches, baby.
Oh, can't go wrong.
Never forget.
Favorite Lexington season?
Spring. Easy.
Of course.
Spring, but end of September, early October is always a close second. Holy crap, I miss that.
Yeah, those turning leaves. Favorite Lexington landmark or Rockbridge County landmark?
Okay, so House Mountain in terms of like a natural thing. I mean, you really can't beat it, that view. Favorite Lexington landmark, Lee Chapel. I was a beta, so my sophomore year I would look out my window and it's like, he's right there.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us today. We really
Thank you for having me. I wish I hope my answers were eloquent enough. I wish I had a little bit more time to think about them. But yeah, I had a great time. And I hope someone out there can take something from this.
I'm sure they will. And if anyone sees this and wants to get in touch with you.
Yeah, just shoot me an email. Can we include that in the notes or something?
Yeah, via email. Thank you so much for joining us.
Dude, mad love. I miss all you guys. Thanks so much for having me out there. And, hopefully we can do something like this again soon.
Awesome. We will see you soon.
All right. Take care.